everyone. Welcome to the MudRoom, our weekly free uncommon sense parenting class. How is everyone today? I don't know about you, but I keep expecting things to slow down, but they're just never slowing down. Like ever. Like as soon as one event is over, the next one is right around the corner. Somehow I thought that once my kids were in school, things would chill out a little bit. And in some ways they have. I'm not run off my feet trying to juggle kids and clients and business stuff all the live long day anymore, and that's amazing, don't get me wrong. I love that. And it's been a very nice change. But on the other hand, I'm just able to get more client and business stuff done, and as a result, it's still incredibly busy. It's just focused and incredibly busy, you know? You win some, you lose some. One of the things that I have been incredibly busy with is getting the community aspect of parentability off Facebook finally. When I started the program in 2017, Facebook was the place to be, and using their group feature to hold our community seemed like a naturally good fit. Everyone was already on Facebook. They were familiar with the interface. It made it easy and accessible for my clients to connect with me and me with them. All good things. But about a year or so ago, Facebook began falling out of favor. People are more concerned about privacy on it. People seem to be hanging out on TikTok and Insta more than Facebook. And I began getting a lot of feedback that the Facebook aspect was turning off some potential clients. And my existing clients started telling me that they were only sticking around Facebook because of parentability. And at the same time, Facebook stopped being quite so usable for me. I have like a whole host of softwares that I use to keep on top of the group coaching aspect of parentability and make sure that everyone gets an answer, everyone is followed up with, but they all rely on Facebook functioning as advertised. And let's just say it very rarely does. So for like over a year, I've been looking for a solution that would get us off of Facebook, but I had a very long list of requirements and none of the platforms quite fit the bill until I decided, screw it, we're making our own community app. So the learning portal is staying where it has been since we redeveloped it about a year and a half ago, at least for now. But the community aspect is now in its own app that is available on Android, iOS, and the web, which I think is pretty cool. And we've spent the last 2 weeks transferring our members over there and shutting down the Facebook group, which is really bittersweet. It kind of feels like when you move houses, you know? Yay for a new house, but ooh, we had so many good memories in the old one. So that's the big news around here. If you want to check it out, you can. Just be warned that only Parentability members can actually sign in. If you have access to the free section of the learning portal and you have a login for that, that is what will load for you instead. So it'll just be like a dedicated browser on your phone. All right, enough about my projects. Let's get on to the good stuff. Today we're talking about how to address historical events with your little kids. Remembrance Day is coming up tomorrow, and as a military family, that's a very important day. And I know a lot of parents struggle with how to address these topics, both on specific days like Remembrance Day and just in general. So I figured, no time like the present, right? Before we get into that though, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Allana Robinson, and I'm a parenting coach for parents of toddlers, preschoolers, and kindergartners. I help you understand why your kids are misbehaving and how to fix it without yelling, shaming, or timeouts. I'm your host here on the MudRoom. I'm also the host of the Parenting Posse Facebook group, and as you've probably deduced by now, I'm the creator of the Parentability program where I help you raise well-behaved kids of your own. If you're watching, say hi, let me know how you're doing, and while you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so that you never miss another class. All right, big bad stuff from the past. Do we need to talk about it? Yes. But how we talk about it is going to be a bit different than how we were told about it, for a couple of reasons. One, the people who were there in the past are starting to disappear. In terms of things like wars, the veterans are aging out of the system, so to speak. The victims too. Even when we're talking about things like slavery and residential schools, those who lived through it and their first-hand accounts are slowly fading, though depending on the actual events we're discussing, some have more first-hand accounts more available than others. I grew up with veterans from both wars and victims of the Holocaust all around me. I saw them at the ceremonies and I spoke with them. But those people are now dying off. And using my own sons as an example, the only reason that they've had any contact with veterans of the Second World War is because my grandfather is 103. Yes, he's 103 and still alive. He's in a nursing home, and that nursing home is specifically for veterans. Obviously, events like the 60s scoop and such have much more available victims who are still around, but they're also aging quickly. So that's a difference. The second reason we need to discuss these differently with our kids than we remember learning about them is because we're more aware of the dark side of these events now. I don't know about you, but things like the wars and residential schools, I learned about from a very glorified white hero perspective, not from the perspective of the victims. And while I guess it's better late than never, that's not the perspective our kids should be learning about these events from. They should be learning the stories of the victims and the impact that these events had on them. And I think this is why parents get so turned around and stressed about how to discuss these events with young kids specifically, because we know that. But we didn't learn that way. So we get caught up in how to communicate these horrific events from the past in a developmentally appropriate way. So I'm hoping today I can give you some pointers that will make it a little bit simpler for you. The first thing that I like to do to introduce these discussions is to search out picture books about them. Picture books really help children, one, understand that this is not a current thing that is happening right now, which is especially important for little ones. They're extremely present little people, and developmentally, they assume anything adults are talking about is happening in the current context. So books really help frame the conversation as not the present. And two, they put pictures and words together. Children have very vivid and wild imaginations, and that's fantastic most of the time. But since they have no visual reference for the kinds of atrocities that we're talking about, they can kind of take that and run with it in their mind and dream up all kinds of monsters and things. So in order to keep the message clear, pictures can really help. And it just gives us a starting point to build the conversation off of. I try as much as possible to find picture books written by people who were there, first-hand accounts of the victims. That's why I like for instance, Phyllis's orange shirt and the slightly more mature version, because Phyllis was there. She was the victim. She is telling the story from her perspective. And since I, and I'm sure you, didn't learn these things from that perspective, that really helps us too. After you read the book, I like to open the floor to questions. While we're reading the book, I like to ask more kind of introspective questions, like how would you feel if that was happening to you? And what do you think that little girl felt like? Or how do you feel that little boy must have felt? Afterwards, though, I like to ask more like, do you have any questions? Often little kids won't have questions right away though. Don't expect that you're going to sit down, read a story about the Holocaust, say, do you have any questions? And have them ramble off a list as long as their arm. Some kids will, but most will need some time to process, so often they're going to say no. But as you continue to read books and add your own commentary to the books, you'll notice the questions start coming. And sometimes it's at a really odd time. Often it's not right after you finish reading the book, because it's Remembrance Day here. We've been reading books about the Holocaust and World War II, and last night I was bathing my youngest, and literally as I'm scrubbing his butt, he comes out with, Mom, what did Jewish people do to make Hitler so angry? Oh, okay, we're having this conversation now? Okay, cool. Kids rarely ask questions when you're ready for them. So here's some tips for answering those questions when they just kind of come out of the blue like that. Be honest, but err on the side of simple. I try to keep my answers to a single sentence, 2 at most, not because I'm trying to shut down the conversation or keep hard truths from my kids, but because I want them to lead the conversation and ask questions, and if I start monologuing, they're going to check out and I won't know where the gaps in their knowledge are. So I try to give a simple but honest answer and then shut up and give them some space to ask more questions, to follow up, even if those questions don't come right away. So in the shower instance, I said, Jewish people have a very strong community and they were very good at supporting each other, and Hitler felt threatened by that. And then I shut up and I kept washing him. And a few minutes later, my oldest said, why did he feel threatened by that? Well, because they were so good at supporting each other that they did a lot of business with each other and they had a very good economy, and he didn't feel that they had the right to that. Again, shut up. Some kids will be happy with the answer that you give them, but some kids just need a little bit of time to think, process, and follow up with, well, why not? Well, because he was racist and he thought that only white, blonde people should be allowed to make money. And then we kept getting ready for bed. And as I was tucking them in, my youngest said, did he only kill Jewish people? And so we started explaining that no, he killed anyone who didn't look like or act the way he wanted them to, including Black people, gay people, and disabled people. The point I'm trying to make here is that you don't have to tell them everything in one big lecture. In fact, it's far more impactful if you drip it out like this and meet them where they're at and let them ask questions. Think about it and ask another question. With really little ones, in the 2 to 3-year-old range, they're obviously less verbal and therefore they're going to have fewer questions. But that's why I really like to lead with picture books, because it helps us to continue exposing them to the topic in a measured way. Generally, you'll reach a point where they seem satisfied with your answer, and that's generally a good place to stop. It doesn't mean that you're never going to come back to the conversation and continue it later, but usually when they stop asking questions, you've reached the point where the information is beyond their developmental capacity to really understand it. And know your kid. If your child tends to be very empathetic and sensitive, don't necessarily soften the information. We don't want to lie to them, but be mindful of how much you're giving them at once to process. We've talked about the wars since my oldest was wee, but this year it seems to be hitting him a bit harder. He understands the magnitude of what happened now. He's 8. He's asking more complex questions, and he's more emotionally affected. I'm still answering his questions honestly. I'm just giving him smaller chunks of information at a time so that he's got more room to process it more fully. And we're talking more about the connection of those events to our present lives. What do we do differently as a result? Why do we vote the way we vote? Why do we treat people the way we treat people? How do we ensure that we don't repeat history? I know these topics are hard to explore with our kids, but they're very, very necessary. And I hope that this helps you feel a bit more comfortable having these conversations with your kids and takes some of the pressure off. You don't have to do it all at once, and they don't have to understand it all at once. They're little, and they have their entire lives, or at least the next 18 years, to fully explore the past as they build the future. So as always, if you'd like to continue the conversation, come and join us in the Parenting Posse. We'd love to help you figure out how to apply these strategies in your family and navigate these difficult topics. The link is in the description. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week for another Uncommon Sense parenting class. Bye.